first thought someone was breaking into my house, but after a few days I realized no one was taking anything. They were just moving things around. My name is Daniel Harper. In mid-February 2020, I moved into a small, single-story rental house in an older suburban area outside Cleveland, Ohio. The place was completely ordinary. Houses close together, dry grass on the front lawn, and at night you couldn't hear anything except the distant sound of the highway. The kind of place where people feel safe. I work in remote customer support, night shift. Night is when I work, inside the house. The faint sound of the heater running and the low hum of the fridge. That's my nighttime environment. The first incident was so small, I didn't even take it seriously. I was sitting in the kitchen working. I had pulled a chair out to sit. After a while, I got up and went to another room. When I came back, the chair was pushed back under the table. I stopped Rate 95, did I push it in myself? May was still tired. That happens when you work night shifts. I didn't think about it any further. The next morning, I saw one of the kitchen cabinets slightly open. I tried to remember. Had I left it open, I couldn't recall. I told myself, time equal 400, maybe I forgot. It's a simple explanation. And people believe simple explanations first. Then nothing happened for 3 days. On the fourth night, I deliberately paid attention to everything. Chair under the table, all cabinets closed, lights off, anal-top prosody. Rate equals 15. I went to my room and kept the door slightly open while working. Toward dawn, when I finished work and went to the kitchen, the chair was clearly moved away from the table this time. This time it didn't feel like maybe I forgot. I stood there for a few seconds. A quiet, heavy discomfort started building in my chest. I slowly looked around. Nothing unusual. I tried to convince myself again. Time equal 500 mil. You're tired. You're remembering wrong. But after that, I started noticing things. Not every day, but regularly every few days. The same kind of changes. The chair slightly turned to NLT. Time equals 600 mil. Your cabinet slightly open. One day I saw the glass by the sink turned in a different direction. Everything was small. Rate equals 85, but everything felt intentional. One night I checked all the doors and windows. Front door locked, prosody. Rate equals 100, back door locked, windows closed. I was still telling myself no one can get in. Time equals 1.5s, then I noticed something else. These changes never happened when I was outside the house. They only happened when I was inside. NLT prosody. Rate equals 90. Once that thought got into my head, everything changed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark with the lights off. Time equals 800 millis. Just listening. The sound of the heater running, the low hum of the fridge, nothing else. Time equals 15s. The next day, I bought a small camera. I set it up facing the kitchen. I needed to be sure whether I was imagining things or not. That night, I set everything back the way it was. Chair in place, cabinets closed. I went to my room and sat with the door slightly open. Time equals 25s. Around 2 a.m. I heard a sound, very faint, like pressure on wood. I froze. I listened. Nothing else. I slowly stood up. I looked toward the kitchen through the hallway. Everything looked normal. I walked forward slowly. The chair was in place. Cabinets closed. I felt a bit of relief. Maybe it really was nothing. In the morning, I checked the camera footage. At first, everything was normal. Then, at one moment, something moved in the very corner of the frame. You couldn't see it clearly, just something like a hand extending out from the darkness. It grabbed the chair. Prosody. Rate equals 80. Slowly. Pulled it. Then disappeared back into the dark. I paused the video. My hands had gone cold. I played it again. Nothing else. The entire frame was empty. I sat there for a long time. I thought about calling the police, but I stopped. What would I say? NLT prosody. Rate honor in quat. Plus 2% in quat. Volume equals loud. I saw a hand on the camera. What if they came and found nothing? Even I could tell. It didn't sound believable. I didn't call. That night, I tried something else. I spread a thin layer of flour across the kitchen floor. If someone walked, there would be marks. I went back to my room and closed the door. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard the sound again. This time clearer. Slow. Time equals 800 ml, like something dragging. I stood by the door. I didn't know if I should open it. I just listened. Time equals 1.5s. A few seconds, then silence. I slowly opened the door. The kitchen was empty. Prosody. Rate equals 90, but on the floor, in the flour, there were shoe prints, not one. Prosody. Rate equals 80. Volume equals loud. Several. The prints went straight and stopped in the corner of the kitchen. I slowly looked up. Near the ceiling, there was a small access panel. AB hadn't noticed it before. The panel was slightly open. Something heavy dropped inside my chest. Tier. Time equals 1.5s. I slowly stepped back. One thought kept repeating in my head. He didn't come from outside. Rate equals 110 that same day. I changed all the locks, front door, back door, everything. I asked the landlord, is there any other key to this house? He said no. The previous tenant returned everything when they left. I didn't say anything, but I didn't believe him either. Nothing happened for 2 nights. I thought it was over. Maybe he used to come in, but now he couldn't. I felt a little relief. The third night, AB heard the sound again. This time, right outside my bedroom door. Like pressure on carpet. I froze. I stared at the door. I didn't make a sound. Slowly. Time equals once. I saw a shadow under the door. Someone standing there. Still, I held my breath. Prosody. Rate equals 85. My hands were shaking. I didn't open the door. I just stood there. A few seconds. Then the Shadow was gone. I didn't move for a long time. Not until morning. When morning came, I opened the door. No one. But on the carpet in front of the door, a wet mark, mixed with a bit of mud, like someone had walked through snow outside and then stood there, in one spot. Still, I left that house the same day. I didn't pack anything. I just left. Later, I called the landlord again. I asked him, is the attic locked separately? He was quiet for a moment. Time equals ones. Then he said, that attic is supposed to be sealed. I didn't ask anything else. But there's one thing that still stays with me. I had locked every door. I had changed every key. Still, if he didn't come from outside, then where did he stay? Or was he still Tenside? Rate equals 90. I'd been seeing the same man for 3 nights, but I never saw him go there. My name is Ethan Cole. In October 2019, I rented a small duplex in a quiet semi-rural area outside Portland, Oregon. The place was strangely quiet, even more so at night. Occasionally you could hear a car in the distance, but other than that, nothing. I work in remote IT support night shift, so my day and night are flipped. After midnight is when my workload increases. My desk was next to a window. You could look straight out onto the road. Prasadi. Rate equals 90. The first night I saw him, around 1 a.m., I looked out the window to rest my eyes for a bit. There was a man standing across the street. Nothing unusual. Someone could be standing there, talking on the phone, waiting for someone. Completely normal. I went back to work. The second night, I saw him again around the same time. But this time I watched a little longer. The man wasn't moving. Prosody. Rate equals 85. I mean, not at all. I squinted and kept looking. He wasn't moving his hands, not checking a phone, not turning his head. Nothing. I told myself, maybe I just can't tell from this distance. At the time, that explanation felt enough. On the third night, I deliberately checked the time and looked out the window. 12:57. The street was empty. 12:59. I didn't take my eyes off it. Suddenly, he was there. The same man, but not in the same spot. Time equals 600 and slightly to the right, next to a mailbox. Something heavy settled inside me. Because AB was sure, I had been looking the whole time. I didn't see him arrive. I stood still for a moment, then I told myself, maybe I looked away for a second. That's possible. People don't notice everything. After that, I started paying attention. Not every night, but often. Around the same time he would be there, but in different places. One day across the street, one day a little closer, one day near a tree. But one thing stayed the same. Time equals ones. He was always facing my direction. I kept trying to stop myself. This is nothing. Time equal 400 millimeters. You're overthinking. I kept telling myself that. One night I decided I would it out. I stopped working and just watched. 12:55, nothing. 12:57, nothing. Rate equals 90. 12:58. He was there. This time a bit closer to the road. I didn't look away. Not at all. I was practically forcing myself to stay still. This time I'll see how he gets there. 1 minute. Time equals ones. 2 minutes. He didn't move. I felt a bit of relief. Maybe I was wrong. Rate equals 95 right then. My eyes dried for a moment. I blinked naturally. Just once. I looked again. Wasn't in the same spot anymore. He was now on this side of the street. My chest jolted. I stood up. I told myself, no, this is coincidence. This can happen. But I knew. Rate equals 95. No, one could cross that distance in 1 second. Not without making a sound. I stepped back slightly. But I didn't take my eyes off the window. I could feel it. If I stopped looking, he would be closer again. That thought got stuck in my head. And prosody. Rate equals 105. I wanted to test it. I deliberately closed my eyes for 3 seconds. 1, 2, prosody. Rate equals 85. 3. I opened them. He was now near my driveway. My throat went dry. And suddenly I realized I had never seen him walk. I had only seen him some rosity. Rate equals 105. Took out my phone. Started recording. I placed the camera facing the window. I stared at the screen. He was standing there, completely still. This time I didn't look away. Not once. Rate equals 90. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Nothing changed. I felt a bit relieved. Maybe I really had been seeing things. Right then, my attention slipped for a second. I didn't even notice how. Maybe a notification. Maybe something else. I looked again. He was now directly below the window. I froze. I slowly looked down. It was dark beneath the window. I couldn't see his full body, but part of him was visible. Close, unnaturally close. And in my head, something started becoming clear. He never comes. He just is. I suddenly turned off the lights. Time equals ones. The room went dark. I didn't make a sound. I stood against the wall. I was trying to hold back even the sound of my own breathing. A few minutes passed. Nothing. No sound. I slowly looked toward the window. Again, no one was there. I stepped back. I could feel my hands shaking. I kept trying to tell myself, this can be explained. This can be explained. I didn't go near the window again that night. The next morning, I watched the video. Everything looked normal. The man was standing far away. Then he was suddenly closer, but no jump, no glitch, nothing, like 2 separate moments. But no movement in between. I watched the video several times. I couldn't understand it. That night, I kept the curtains closed. I didn't want to look. I told myself, if I don't look, it won't be there. Time equals 2s around 1 a.m. I heard a sound, very faint, like pressure on the floor. I froze. Another sound. Time equals ones. This time clearer. It wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from inside the house. Rate equals 85. A heavy jolt hit my chest. I slowly turned my head. In the darkness of the hallway, a figure was standing. At first I couldn't make it out, then my eyes adjusted. Him, same posture. Time equals 1 standing the same way. This time, inside, my mind wasn't working. Was thinking only one thing. The door was locked. I slowly took a step back. I was staring at him. Time equals 1.5s. I closed my eyes for 1 second. I don't know why. Maybe from fear. I opened them again. The hallway was empty. No one. I immediately turned on all the lights. Checked aprosity. Rate equals 100. No one. But something wasn't right. On the hallway carpet, a faint wet mark, like someone had been standing there with wet shoes in one spot. Still, I left that same night. I never stayed in that house again. But there's one thing that still stays in my head. I never saw him walk. I only saw him when I was looking. I always thought that while doing duty alone in a massive cold storage at minus 20 degrees, not prosody, rate equal 100, the biggest cause of fear was frostbite, or freezing to death in the cold. But when you are completely alone in a place like that at 2:30 in the morning, then you realize the cold is actually no big deal at all. Time equals 1.5s. The real terror is seeing something on the ice-covered floor that has absolutely no reason to be there. The incident happened last year in December LT. Time equals 800 millid. I was working the night shift at a commercial meatpacking and cold storage facility in northern Minnesota, near the Canada border. To gather the semester's fees, I had no choice but to do overtime in this bone-chilling cold. The facility is massive, almost the size of an indoor stadium. The surroundings are enclosed by 3-foot-thick insulated metal panels, inside which no cellular signal penetrates. The Christmas holiday season was going on, so there were only 2 of us on the shift. In the main building security booth was the elderly guard Dave, and me, the inventory checker, inside this massive, dark deep freezer. It is 2:30 at night. I was working in Sector C, wearing a heavy thermal jacket and double gloves. The atmosphere of the place is already quite strange. The gigantic cooling fans on the ceiling make a continuous groaning sound, and due to thermal contraction, sometimes such loud noises come from the metal joints, as if someone is beating them with a hammer. I was walking over the metal grating with a clipboard in hand. With every step, the heavy sound of my boots was echoing. With every breath exhaled, thick white smoke is coming out. The job is extremely monotonous. When I reached a dark corridor right at the very end of Sector C, I suddenly stopped in my tracks. A light layer of ice has accumulated on the floor. As soon as I cast the light of the flashlight toward the floor, felt like the heartbeat inside my chest had stopped for a second. Footprints, not the prints of any boots or shoes. Prosody. Rate equals 85, absolutely clear. Bare footprints, the marks of walking over the ice. My brain immediately wanted to deny the scene. I told myself, this is impossible. If someone stays barefoot in this minus temperature for a few minutes, they are bound to get frostbite. I thought, maybe Dave did this with some mold to have a joke with me. But the man is 60 years old. For him to leave his warm cabin and come out in this cold to prank me, even thinking that is foolish. I went a little closer and cast the light. The prints are completely fresh. Ice dust is still crumbling off the edges. My throat went bone dry. I could have dropped the work and run, but it felt like, if this is merely some water dripping mark or a mistake of my eyes, and I get scared and run away, leaving the work, then I will lose the job tomorrow morning. I stood silently for a few seconds. I just tried to hear if there was any other sound besides the sound of the fans. There is nothing. Calming myself down, I took the radio out of my pocket to call Dave. I pressed the button, but there is no static sound. The radio is completely dead, Donald Terry. Time equals 1s. In the extreme cold of the deep freezer, batteries drain very fast. This is simple logic. I knew that, but at that exact moment, that dead radio created a strange unease inside me. I took my phone out of my pocket and saw written on the screen was emphasis. Level equals strong, no service. I decided the work for today is done. I started walking toward the main door. I increased my walking speed a little bit. When I am just 15 paces away from the door, exactly then, clang, the massive thermal door closed, making a heavy metallic sound. Prosody. Rate equals 1 of 5 at first. I did not panic even a little bit. I thought maybe this is some matter of the automatic system, or it closed due to air pressure. I went and pulled the door's handle. It did not open. I pulled again, this time with the strength of my entire body. But the door did not move even an inch. It felt like the latch on the other side got stuck, or someone was intentionally holding the handle tightly from the other side. Exactly. Then, behind me, a sound came from inside the darkness. Scrape, scrape. A very sound. The sound of something walking by dragging itself over the ice. Even amidst the groaning sound of the fans, this sound was so clear that my entire body went numb. I turned the flashlight off immediately. I didn't want anyone to know my location. Holding my breath, I hid behind a large stack of cartons. I was just trying to listen. The scraping sound was getting closer little by little. I looked through the gap, the cartons, on the other end of the corridor. In the dim darkness, a figure is standing. I could not see clearly. I could only understand it is tall, just like a human. But its standing posture, time equals 800 millius dot, was not normal. Its 2 shoulders were hanging unnaturally, and its body was not shivering at all. In bone-chilling cold, It was standing completely still. It felt to me like it was looking for me, but not with its eyes. Its head was tilted a little bolt. Time equals 600 mil sadas if it was trying to hear the sound of my breathing. I knew if I hid here, I would freeze to death in the cold. I had to pull the emergency release lever, which was right next to the door. I did not think of anything else. Coming out from behind the cartons, I made a run toward the door. The scraping sound from behind suddenly seemed to start coming toward me rapidly. Reaching near the door, I grabbed the lever tightly, but my fingers had become so frozen in the cold that my hand slipped. I started to panic. The sound from behind is now only a few paces away. With the heavy metal flashlight in my hand, I struck the lever forcefully. Clang! The lever went down and the door opened. Pushing the door open in one shove, I stumbled out into the outside corridor and ran straight toward the main building. When I was panting after entering Dave's cabin, he was looking at me in surprise. I told him everything, but knitting his eyebrows, he said, "What are you talking about? I didn't see anything on the CCTV. You were entirely alone in there." The next day, the police came. They checked the entire storage, but no one was found inside. They said, "I might have hallucinated from the stress of overtime in the cold. The door might have gotten jammed due to air pressure or a mechanical fault." Maybe I would have believed exactly that. 2. Maybe I would have assumed the whole thing was a mistake of my mind. But when the police were checking the mechanism of the door, they noticed one thing. The inner side of the thermal door's emergency latch was bent strangely, as if someone or something Breck, Time equals ones, had been holding it with impossible force so that I could not open the door in any way. I quit the job that very day. I do not know what was inside the cold storage that night. But even today, on winter nights when ice gathers on my window glass, time equals 800 . I feel scared to pull the curtains aside. I feel like perhaps I will see that bare footprint on the ice once again.